Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's podcast. In this podcast, we will exploring the intersections of innovation, society, and our planet. Today, we're tackling a big and increasingly urgent questions: Is technological optimism in developed nations inadvertently delaying the truly meaningful actions that we need on critical issues like climate change, resource depletions, and growing society inequalities? It's a fascinating and complex debate. And here we assembly three of my friends, Nurul Hidayu, Putri Nabila, and Fatin Zulaika. So, yeah, welcome everyone.
Thanks for having me, Valerie. It's a crucial topic.
Absolutely, Ben. I'm glad we are shining a light on this, bringing both environmental and economic perspective.
Looking forward to an encouraging discussion.
Okay, Putri Nabila, let's start with you. When we talk about technological optimism in this context, especially in developed nations, what exactly are we referring to? What does it look like?
Valerie, at its core, technological optimism is a belief, sometimes bordering on an unwavering faith, that scientific and technological advancements will ultimately solve, or at least significantly mitigate, major society and environmental problems. It is inherent belief in human ingenuity to involve our way out of challenge. It's not entirely negative. In fact, it drives immense research, development, and groundbreaking breaking through. Think of development, or the rapid advancement in AI. The error, however, is that often promise solution that doesn't require fundamental challenge to our lifestyles, our consumption pattern, or the core structure of our economic. It's the idea that we can maintain our current trajectory and simply wait for a new invitation to fix the negative consequence.
Um, and that's precisely where the problem lies, isn't it? From both an environmental and economic perspective, this optimism often manifests as a kind of wait and see approach, a dangerous form of procrastination. We hear about future carbon capture technologies that can suck carbon dioxide directly from the air, or grand geoengineering solutions that might dim the sun, or miraculous new fusion energy sources just around the corner, and it creates a perilous complacency. Individuals, corporations, and especially policymakers think, oh, a tech fix is coming, so we don't need to cut emissions drastically now, or fundamentally redesign our consumption habits, or challenge the very notion of endless growth. It per- perpetually push genuine systematic uh, change down the road, always to some unspecified future date. From an economic viewpoint, investing heavily in a future technology seems less disruptive to current economic models, supply chains, and established industries than imposing immediate sweeping changes like high carbon taxes, stringent industrial standards, or incentivizing radical shift in consumer behavior through economic disincentive. There is a strong economic incentive to fund moonshot R&D for a silver bullet rather than addressing the current, often significant externalities of our extractive and linear economic activities. The hope for a cheaper, less destructive technological fix can indeed delay necessary investment in immediate proven solutions, because those immediate solutions often have a higher upfront cost or impact on existing economic power structure.
So, you raise a critical point that resonates deeply in policy circles. We often see this dynamic play out. Governments, particularly in developing nations, might set very ambitious long-term climate targets, net zero by 2050, for example, but then when you look at the interim plans, they rely heavily on unproven nations or extremely expensive technologies to meet those targets decades from now. This significantly reduced the political pressure to implement stronger, more immediate regulations or incentivize immediate behavior shifts, which are often unpopular with voters or powerful industries. Think about the debates around the carbon capture and storage for existing fossil fuel plants versus simply phasing out fossil fuels in lands entirely. The former often gets more research funding, subsidies, and policy forecasts, despite the latter being a more immediate, albeit harder, path that requires immediate disruptions. This is a way to seem proactive without being disruptive.
You've all touched on how the optimisms can delay actions. Nabila, you mentioned earlier licensing. Can you elaborate on that and how it's play out with the technology?
Absolutely, Valerie. Moral licensing is a psychological phenomena where performing an internal good deed or even anticipating a future good deed give individual subsequent permission to act less virtually later. In the context of technology, it's the idea that knowing a potential solution is being developed, say a new battery technology or a more efficient solar panel, reduce the preserve ethical obligation to make personal careers today. I recycle more later when the technology is more efficient or someone else will invite a fix. So I don't need to change my driving habits. This applies not just to individual but to entire society and industry. The danger is that it forces a passive complemency. However, it's crucial to distinguish. Many environmental problems do require technological solution. Renewable energy, for instance, is a monumental technological triumph that enables a fundamental shift away from fossil fuel. The issue isn't technology itself, it's the over-reliance on future, often a proven technology as an excuse for indication today. It's about finding the right balance between proactive measure and smart, responsibly innovation that's ready now.
But even with proven deployable technologies like renewable energy, the rollout is often frustrating, slower than necessary, because the public and industries are still hoping for something even easier or cheaper to come along, or the perceived economic disruption is too high. This technological optimism becomes a massive distraction from addressing the core issues of overconsumption, our throwaway culture, uh, and the industrial system that perpetuate them. From an environmental justice standpoint, it's about a fundamental shift in our relationship with resources, away from linear extraction and towards circularity and sufficiency. We can simply replace every gasoline car with an electric one if the electricity still comes from coal, or if the manufacturing of those cars still involves massive resource extraction and waste impacting vulnerable communities. The market might eventually deliver some of these technological solutions, but relying solely on that without strong policy signal, like a meaningful carbon price that reflect the true cost of emissions, or strong incentive for circular business model, means the incentive to adopt current effective but perhaps more expensive solution is weak. It's about creating the right economic environment where immediate, meaningful action is not only encouraged but becomes the most economically rational choice alongside continued ethical innovations. We need to internalize the externalities of pollution and resource depletion, making the unsustainable choice genuinely more expensive than sustainable one.
Sorry, Fatin. Your mic.
And this directly translates into policy. When you are trying to pass legislations that request significant economic restructuring, change in industry practice, or even subtle shift in lifestyle, the argument that technology will fit it is a powerful, almost irresistible. Political tools for delaying or weakening such measures. It appeals to a public that generally wants to solutions without sacrifice. This creates a vicious cycle where the very optimism for future solutions undermines the urgency for current, often inconvenient actions. Lobbying for industry in the status quo also plays a hard role. They champion the distance fix to avoid immediate regulatory burdens.
Okay, let's look at some concrete example where this plays out. Hidayu, you mentioned geoengineering and resource depletions. Can you elaborate on how that might delay actions on climate change and the circular economy?
Absolutely. Geoengineering techniques like solar radiation management, which aim to reflect sunlight back into space, perhaps by injecting aerosols into the stratosphere, or carbon dioxide removal technologies such as direct air capture, are often presented as potential get out of jail free cards for climate change. The danger is that they create the illusion that we don't really need to cut emissions. If we can just tweak the planet's thermostat or vacuum up carbon dioxide later, why disrupt our current energy system? This divert attention and resources away from the immediate, proven and necessary actions like rapidly phasing out fossil fuels, investing heavily in distributed renewables, reforestation, and drastically reducing consumption, solar radiation management in particular carries enormous risks and ethical dilemmas, including potential unforeseen climatic disruption and questions of who controls the global thermostat. It's a dangerous distraction that defers economic responsibility. And on resource depletion, we see a familiar pattern when we discuss finite resource. The optimism shift to ideas like deep sea mining for rare earth minerals, or even asteroid mining in the distant future. This narrative often downplays the immediate needs for a robust circular economy. Aggressive recycling, material efficiency, and simply reducing overall consumption. Why invest heavily in costly and complex recycling infrastructure, or change consumer habit to demand less, when we're told we can just step into new limitless sources in space or under the oceans? Economically, the current incentives still favor extraction over circularity, and that future optimism simply reinforces the status quo rather than forcing innovation in resource management and truly valuing what we already have.
Let's also consider public health and inequality. There's a narrative that technology will democratic access to healthcare and education. While this certainly can enable this, and optimistic view often sidestep addressing the underlying systematic issue. For example, relying on AI for diagnostics in remote area is great, but it doesn't solve the fundamental lack of clean water, nutritious food, or safe housing, which are primarily determinants of health. Similarly, using app teach to deliver online learning can be beneficial, but it won't fix the widening digital divide of if millions lack basic internet access of device, or if the content itself reflects existing basis. It promises a universal fix without tackling the deeply entrenched social and economic structure that perpetuate inequality, and it can even exacerbate them if not deployed through truthful and equitably.
And from a policy perspective, it's easier to fund a grand technological initiative with a clear scientific deliverable than to pass legislation that tackles entrenched social determinants of health or wealth inequality, which often involve difficult considerations about redistribution, land use, or corporate power. The TISH solution feels cleaner, less politically charged, and avoids confronting powerful invest interests. This is particularly evident in disaster preparedness and recovery in terms of investing in resilience infrastructure or moving communities out of floodplains. There is sometimes a tendency to rely on sophisticated early warning systems or emergency teach, which are useful but don't address the root vulnerability and economic disparities that make certain populations more susceptible to disaster.
This has been a really insightful discussions, highlighting the pitfall of unchecked technology optimisms. So, for our final segment, let's talk about the path forward. How do we balance genuine innovations with the urgent need for meaningful actions? Puchi Nabila, how do we cultivate what you call prudent optimisms?
Prudent optimism, Valerie, means for fostering genuine innovation and embracing technology where it can be truly transformative, but without falling into blind faith or complacency. It requires a critical lens, asking not just can we build it, but should we build it, who benefits, and what are the unique consequence. It means prioritizing technology that supports system change rather than perpetuate the status quo. This involves robust ethical framework for technology development, demanding transparency and ensuring accountability. It's about seeing technology as a powerful tool for change, not a magical substitute for difficult choice.
For environmental economists, meaningful action looks like a fundamental re-evaluation for our economic growth models and consumption habits. It involves rapid, equitable decarbonization through proven renewables, massive investment in energy efficiency, and a drastic reduction in waste and resource use through circular economy principles. It means protecting and restoring natural ecosystem. Our most effective carbon sink and biodiversity protectors, recognizing their immense economic value. It demands strong binding regulations on industries and holding polluters accountable alongside market-based mechanisms that make unsustainable choice uneconomical, and it means individual responsibility but not solely placing the burden on consumers. It's about shifting system to internalize externalities and make sustainable choices the easiest and most affordable, and fostering new green industries.
Policies must reflect current realities and push for tangible action now, rather than banking on speculative future fixes. This means implementing robust carbon pricing mechanisms, investing heavily in sustainable public transport, retrofitting existing infrastructure, and increasing green industry that are ready for development today. It also involves creating just transitions policies to support workers and communities affected by the shift away from the fossil fuels, ensuring no one is left behind. Government needs to lead by example, producing green technologies and setting ambitious, enforceable standard, resisting the temptation to kick the can down the road by relying on future miracles.
This has been a powerful call for balanced approach, one that champions innovation but pair it with an unyielding commitment to immediate system actions. Puji Nabila, Nurul Hidayu, and Fatin Zuleka, thank you all for this incredibly insightful and urgent discussion.
My pleasure, Valerie.
Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure.
That's all for today's podcast. See you next time. Goodbye for now.